computer.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Strong Life Podcast. This is your host and your boy, Zach Evanesh. I'm with my friend, Josh Rondeau. Is that how I say your last name, Josh?
Rondeau. Yep.
And Josh and I connected because I saw him posting some old school strength books and magazines, and people who've been following me for a bit, they know that I have a problem. If I was to go to like a rehab, it would be for like buying and purchasing old training books and old training equipment. And then we hop on the phone every couple of weeks, and then we're like, all right, it's late. We got to get off the phone. We'll talk. Yeah. We talk training. And for the people listening, I'm going to encourage you to check it out on YouTube. Watch the video, because we're in Josh's garage gym in his house where he runs the business out of. And behind him, we've got the hook bar, which he developed, and he released the first version of it. People have been purchasing it. Louis Simmons of Westside Barbell picked it up.
He hasn't picked it up yet. Skiba showed it to him. We're going to go down there at some point. So,
you're going to do the
in-person. Skiba has it. Institute of Iron has it. And Windham County Strength has it right now.
Nice. And where are you located again, Josh?
So I'm located in Western Massachusetts, South Hadley. So a little bit cold weather climate, a little bit north of you.
Yep.
This place. First thing I do want to say though is thank you for having me on. Huge honor. We've been talking for a long time about a lot of cool stuff. So it's really cool to like get out there and put all these books out and ideas out and kind of a recorded setting rather than just you and me having multiple phone conversations
on the phone. Yeah. And I agree. It's super important because sometimes I get pissed off because I feel like there's so much, there's a lot of real guys out there, but then there's also so much flash and fads and gimmicks, and that stuff gets old. And I just like to see guys like you who have really kind of dug up the history of training, and then we blend it with modern day science. And look, the guys of the powerlifters and the lifters that, these books that you review, the 60s is really, the Russians were doing a lot of the stuff that America is starting to come across the past decade. It's crazy that we think how the Soviets, they were 50 to 60 years ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing, and I've heard this Kenny Toth, Kenny obviously, and he said this, and it kind of really resonates with me. Like with strength training, nothing is really new, right? Like there are new modalities, there are new things that are out there, but you got to think like a lot of the stuff that the principles that are based off of they're pretty old. And granted, yes, there's more technology out there now. There's more ways to determine or develop, but like think of like the earliest forms of accommodating resistance, right? Like weight releasers, or even prior to that, you squat down with a weight you can't lift. Your friends take it off, you stand back up. Like that's old, that's been going on. That's probably what, the 50s, the Soviets started doing that.
There's some old, as you've got a lot of the old books, and there's that, you've seen probably the Polish weightlifting video, correct? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure when that was filmed, but it looks like 70s. I don't know, maybe 80s, but you see them lifting a heavy or lowering a heavy weight, and then a partner on each side raising the weight for them. So, like the future method, or essentially almost like, doing the negatives. And also they did, the Soviets, because they're these Eastern European countries, because they were so backed by like pride in their country, the government created and funded a lot of the software, or whatever, I guess, technology and computers to test and track a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Did you ever read that book Off the Floor?
No.
I'm reading it right now, and it's a book about essentially deadlifts. It's a really good book.
Who wrote it? Do you remember the name?
David. I'm going to mispronounce his last name. It's Della. I'm terrible with it. It's like an N-A-U-V. It's a long.
Yes. I know Dave. I think he's in the Philly area.
Yeah, so he was talking about, and it's a wonderful book, and I apologize to Dave because I'm terrible with last names, but he talks about in the book in the 50s, the Soviets were using biofeedback with how they like their grip strength was that day. So they would assess if your grip strength was high, okay, you're good to train. If not, we need to back off. So it's like, I think like 1950, they were already kind of meddling in these feedbacks, looking at how the central nervous system was affected. And it's just, it's insane that, you know, people think, oh, we've come up with this new crazy idea or this new technology. And it's like, people have been, you know, people have been strong for a long time. You got to think about it. People look at like just the overhead numbers back in the day, Sandow and all these guys with the pulling axe.
Oh yeah.
People had to figure out how to get strong in really rudimentary ways. And what was the key factor? Hard work. That's really what it came down to. They didn't have, you know, a lot of the stuff we have nowadays, but they still were able to produce phenomenal results. So like I said, it goes back to that Kenny quote that, you know, nothing in strength training is new. It might be a new way about it or a new discovery, but you know, those principles they've been around for a long time.
What's cool too now is we're seeing some of the old Soviet, you know, sport coaches. Some of them left, you know, and I know years ago, one of those guys, he passed away. I'll have to dig up his name, but he moved to Staten Island, which was not far from where I used to live in Edison. And they some of the NFL strength coaches kind of organized, or he organized something with the NFL strength coaches, Johnny Parker, who co-wrote the book,
The System. They talk about that. And that's a great read too. That book's huge.
That book's great. So that
really
guy passed away. Basically, he came and shared his methods. And then what's also, I spoke about the book, Secrets of Soviet Sport and Fitness Training. Now it's Secrets of Russian. So Dr. Yessis wrote it in 74. I was born in 75. And it's like, whoa, the stuff he was talking about in there that the Soviets were doing didn't really start getting applied too heavily in the States until like 2010 and beyond. And even like, I exchanged a few emails recently with Cal Dietz. I was on the phone earlier with Chris Corfist. They co-created the RPR system with JL Holdsworth. And I think of like this kind of like reset with all the essentially massage. You look at some of these old videos, the lifters will like massage one, or you'll see the wrestlers, you know, the guy will like lay down and like the guy will massage. And I remember when we were at Rutgers, we used to do that. So our head associate, Donnie Pritzloff, would do that. The guys would like finish like a workout. And then like you would be on the guy's back. You'd be kind of like digging in. You'd put him in like an arm bar and like you would stretch him. So it's interesting. Is like it just takes time. How's my volume? Okay. We good? Oh, no volume? Hold on. Hold on, guys. Hang tight with us. So I don't have volume from you. Oh, ask to unmute. Unmute yourself. I'm going to put this. Guys, just hang tight. Hold on. I'm going to, let's see. How do I chat here? There we go. Okay. Are you good, Josh? Got to get unmuted. I'm going to put it in the chat. You see, unmute yourself. Guys, hang tight. Little tech. Unmute yourself. There we go. All right, guys. So while you're listening, Josh is going to get his videos back up. While you're listening, guys, we're going to share really how Josh and I met with all these. He's got a Instagram channel called Strength and Power Review. And so his Instagram channel, I came across it. And oh, hold on one second, guys. Let me give Josh a call and we will figure this out. We're keeping it real. We are keeping it real. Okay. He's just got to unmute himself. He's got
hear me now?
Yep, I got you, buddy. You know what happened, Josh? I think you muted yourself. I hear you, buddy, loud and clear. So Josh's Instagram is Strength and Power Review. He's giving me a call. Hey, buddy, you're good. I think you muted yourself by accident.
No, the mic just went out. Absolutely. I didn't touch anything or do anything. It just
all right.
Went off.
You're good to go now. So hang up the phone. We're good, buddy. Bye. Okay. Let's let
You hear me?
Yeah, we're good to go. So we're good.
I can't hear you at all.
Oh, no? Hold on then. What about right now? You hear me? Shit. All right, guys, hang tight. I'm on. I'm good to go. Hold on. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Should be good. I'm going to just cut the recording here. Let's see. All right, guys. So we're back. Sorry for the little tech difficulty. I yelled for my son to come and fix, and then Josh is calling his wife. So it's like
it's
two
a mess.
meatheads trying to make it happen. So Josh, what I was talking about is while you were trying to fix this is your Instagram channel, Strength and Power Review. So, that's how we came across. I think I saw Kenny Toth reposting some of your stuff, and I came across it, and I saw you reposting books that I don't even have a hold of. And I say I'm a good collector. I wouldn't say I'm the greatest, but you've come across a lot of the old stuff. We kind of jumped right into things, but I'd love to give a little history because I'd love to hear how you started coming across the older information or why you gravitated towards it. Who kind of introduced you to these older books that got you hooked?
So, I started powerlifting when I got out of the Navy. I started my earliest strength training while I was in the service. So I read Starting Strength, and I really enjoyed that book. And it kind of just showed me the stuff. I never had a coach or anything. So I read that book, and I really, was like, oh, it's got the movements. It explains why, 5-3-1, and then gravitated into a lot of, the West Side stuff, all the stuff that Louis wrote, the book of methods, all the things that pretty much Louis has written. Yeah. I read all that stuff, and I really enjoyed it. And, you hear these people talk about other people, right? So Ripito started talking about Bill Starr. Yes. And that sort of was the catalyst for me. Like I read The Strongest Shall Survive and then Defying Gravity.
What a title. Strongest Shall Survive. I mean, it's just perfect.
It's right down Main Street, right? Like the title says it, and you're like, okay, wow. So I read that book, and that was published in, I believe, 1976. And then Defying Gravity, I think, was 1983. I'm pulling numbers out, but I think I'm correct. Yep. But I'm reading these, and I'm like, wow, these are profound. They go through the whole process. They teach you everything you need to know. We're not just talking about strength training. We're talking about diet, nutrition, your vitamins, minerals, and a lot of philosophies that I hadn't seen anywhere else. So I was kind of like, okay. So I started reading pretty much everything Bill Starr wrote, every article I could get my hands on.
Where'd you find his articles? I know they reprinted a lot on Starting Strength.
Yep, he's done a lot through Starting Strength. I believe I've got a few from the old Milo. Like he wrote for Milo for a few years. Yes. And as you train and you start to get really into weightlifting, you kind of meet people in that realm. And for me, it was Kenny and Skiba and Joe and Justin Kavanaugh. I met all these guys, and they kind of pointed me to like more and more resources. And I just kind of looked at I think part of it was, they started training in the 70s, and I was like, well, what did they have back then that kind of brought them to where they are now?
Yep.
So it went from that to like Boyer Co. and then John Cook and Bill Antone and Bill Seno, all these old names of guys that had written stuff. So I just kind of anything. Initially, it started with I'd look at it, I was like, oh, what is this cover like? Like the cover looks kind of cool. And like you said, you go back to like The Strongest Shall Survive. Like that grips you right when you read it. So other books were like John Cook Speaks on Powerlifting or Pushing for Power, and then you start reading I
have that book.
Yeah, Fred Hatfield's Power Training.
Yes.
So it started. I just started reading them all, kind of going through it. Just it was kind of like being a kid. You get like a comic book or something, or a baseball or football card, and you get like a couple, and then you're like, oh man, there's more out there. And then it got to the point where hundreds of books later at this point, I always find something, even if it's not something I initially was looking at. You go and I even look at like John Lear and all the Olympic weightlifting stuff he wrote about in the UK in the 70s and the 80s. You still find stuff in there that's relevant for whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it be bodybuilding or powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting. So for me, it just started out of an interest. I read some really good books early on, and I always like to read and write. It's just something that always kind of gravitated with me. And then you find these great resources, and the older books for me, they just had not only that level of nostalgia, but they kind of were speaking to somebody like who maybe had never gotten into it, and they're teaching you about it as you're learning, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, like, some of this stuff's a little rudimentary that I've been reading now, but you always find a gem. And for me, the old books they always have something hidden in there.
They teach you, you're right, when you spoke about like how it's rudimentary, but they taught you to kind of like respect the weights, treat the gym or the weight room like a dojo. And then you kind of bounced around saying like, hey, this guy was a powerlifter, Boyer Coe's a bodybuilder. But what was interesting is guys, especially in the 60s, but also in the 70s and 80s, they did multiple, the way we would encourage athletes to do multiple sports. The bodybuilders competed in World's Strongest Man. The equipment was made by Zuver. Powerlifters were often weightlifters and bodybuilders. And so they kind of went through these different phases, right? Tommy Kono was a bodybuilder, and I don't know what he placed in the Olympics. Was he a bronze medalist in the Olympics?
I believe. I mean, Tommy went on to coach some really good guys too, later on too.
Yeah.
So I don't know too much about his Olympic exploits, but if you go back, it's similar to like Bill Seno. He was a national champion in Olympic weightlifting, a national champion in bodybuilding, and a national champion in powerlifting. How many people do that now?
Well,
you don't even see it.
But his training, when you look at his book, Pushing for Power, it's like a power bodybuilding workout. It's a lot of 5x5. Even now, when you look at like the West Side stuff, it's like their main lift gets kind of the uniqueness, right? The bands, the chains, something unique. Then after that, it's pretty much bodybuilding. I remember Louis saying that to me. He's like, what we're doing is power bodybuilding. He's like, we do our max effort or dynamic effort lift with the conjugate method. Then we utilize all these bodybuilding methods to hit from different angles. When I was a kid, I'm a little older than you. So when I was a teenager, Mike Francois became a pro bodybuilder, but he trained with West Side guys. So he would go and squat, bench, and deadlift with them. Then later on at night, he'd go to the bodybuilding gym and do his hack squats and leg extensions and leg curls. But Louis had him doing a lot of unique squats, like close stance squats, heels elevated, close stance squats. We're starting to see that in the athletic realm now. You see all these foot plates for heel elevated squats, but I think certain coaches could only get so much information out there, but some of these guys like Louis have been doing these things for decades.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go back to like the Culver City West Side, you look at like Bill Peanuts and that gang, They had Olympic shot putters training there, and guys who were pretty accomplished bodybuilders.
I got this. These are all the original West Side articles.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ken gave it to Jim Wendler.
Yep. Jim
Wendler gave it to me. I couldn't believe Jim gave it to me. He's like, Zach, I know you love this stuff. And so, somebody reprinted all these. He put it together in a book on Amazon. It's pretty messy. The guy
is it the
Darnell?
Yeah, The Secrets of the Culver City West Side Gang. So I just read that, and I've had people reach out and like, well, is the book worth it? I'm like, just for those old Muscle Builder like article excerpts alone, I'd pay $25 or whatever.
Exactly. I have those magazines, and basically what he had to do was photocopy stuff and then put in. But if you respect the information, hey, you love it.
Like it's a lot. There's a lot there. You got to bounce back and forth.
Yes.
But for that book, there's a lot of really good stuff in one spot. You've got just years and years of information. Yes, it is all over the place. But like I said, I can't think of one other book that has, you Pat Casey in there, and then you have, you've got Olympic throwers. It's champion bodybuilders. It's got a lot of people in that book.
It's impressive.
It's really interesting.
What's been, you've got, I'd love to see what your library looks like one day. What's been kind of like one or two books that you just keep coming back to, whether it's inspiration or knowledge? What's one of those one or two books that you just love?
You brought up Jim Wendler, so we'll go right there because
Yep.
that's right off the top of my head. 531, but not just, he's written a few. I have all of them. I have the first one, the second edition, Beyond 531, and then 531 Forever. And if you just look at that book, just for what it is, I mean, he's essentially given you a lifetime of programming in one book, which that's a lot of bang for your buck. A lot of people would have like an online service or something where you'd be getting things monthly or weekly. No, he gave you a book that essentially, if you really, were motivated, you can plan what you want to do for the next few years. So, I mean, I always recommend anything Jim wrote
I love Jim.
to anyone, especially like high school kids and a lot of younger or collegiate athletes, guys who get into it, because that's what gravitated me to like want to read more books. Like you look at like Starting Strength, that's more of a technical manual. You look at like Jim Wendler's writing, and it's kind of like, oh man, this guy gets it.
Oh yeah, you resonate. Have you ever met Jim?
Yeah, I met Jim at Swiss in 2018. We had a steak, and we didn't talk about training once. We talked about Black Sabbath albums and college football, and it was awesome. It was Jim. They say don't meet people you respect or your idols. He's pretty cool.
He's the realest guy. So I met Jim in person probably in 05, something like that, maybe 06. And we presented together a few times, but man, like, he's just the guy, dude. He's just a bro. He's the ultimate bro.
He's a good dude, man. Like, and like I said, we only hung out that one time, but we literally just talked about Black Sabbath and college football. Yeah. And that to me, like, those are two really good topics, right? You could just have that's enough in itself.
Yeah. He, what did he say about college football? What did you guys talk about that?
we were talking, if I can recall it, and again, we're in Canada at Swiss eating steaks, but we were talking about we were talking about his college football experience personally. He kind of just talked about that. And then, I think it went more into like, we were talking about like those old powerhouse schools, like Nebraska, like that run style football. And that's kind of just, we both kind of talked about obviously how, that, if I'm trying to remember, this is 2 years ago, but that aspect was kind of missing from the game. You don't see like, that's what I miss about football. Like that run style, dude, like that's the precursor.
Josh, have you seen the Nebraska method on YouTube? It's on YouTube.
I have not. I have one of their old strength books. I haven't seen their method.
Oh, wow. This video's from the 80s, early 80s. And you saying that, like, you see the guys running, they're like bulldozing through people. They're like escaping tackles with like 2 to 3 guys.
Yeah.
And these guys were huge.
Yeah.
And you see them doing, it's really for 80s, 40 years ago, essentially 82, very advanced. I mean, they had real good agility. They were doing like more of like a muscle clean, not so much a power clean, but they were just like hulking the weight, and the equipment was essentially not big enough for some of the guys. And there's
if you go to like one of those schools, like, like out in the center of the country, right? Like you're just a meathead and you love to lift, and it still holds true today. Look at how big some of their guys are, but it's awesome. I'll check it out.
Yeah. If you can't find it, I'll find it for you. But ironically, when I came across it, it had like 1,800 views.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, here is like the original strength and conditioning, college strength and conditioning, right? And some of these like YouTube stars, they get 1,800 views like on their first day.
Yeah.
So it was just interesting how that great info is kind of hidden. And so it was interesting too. Like I remember when Jim was creating 531 and how he came about it. So I want to segue, because you train athletes out of your garage, right? Yep. Were you at one point going to a high school to train athletes?
Yes. So I volunteered at South LA High and worked with the football team.
How big of a school is that? Is it big?
Pretty not a big school. I mean, the population, it's a town I grew up in. I think we have 1,800 people or 18,000 people. I'm sorry, 18,000 people in the town. The good program, really great coaches, good people. Not huge, not like massive numbers. You weren't getting 75 kids on the team. You were getting the 50 maybe, but I did that, volunteer for a few years.
How'd that work? Talk to us about, because coaches, got a lot of coaches that listen, they don't know how to get into a school. Even guys like yourself who grew up in a town can't even volunteer in a town. So
Yeah.
they can't even give it away. So talk about how you made it happen.
So Ryan Moore, he was the head JV coach. He was on the fire department with me. And,
Okay.
you know, so I knew him through that. And then my brother had played there before he went on to college. And the head coach knew me, you know, as his older brother. You know, he always knew we lifted, and my brother lifted with me. So it kind of went down as I just said, hey, I got some free time. I'd really like to help, you know, show the kids basic movements. I know you guys, you know, really don't have a program. It's kind of like, you know, we found this video on YouTube and we're teaching kids that. So I kind of was like, hey, I'll come in and we'll implement the basic movements. We'll, you know, set up programming, and we'll make an environment that is, you know, centered around teamwork, and just, you know, kind of just felt them out about how they felt about it. They were like, absolutely, come on in. So we did that for
how'd
the
program look on like what did it look like in the beginning? Were the kids?
So this is when I first started. So we went as old school as you can. We fired up Bill Starr, and we started running just basic 5x5s, stuff like that.
Yep.
We let them push certain sets. You know, we keep it within we wouldn't go to obviously max intensity on if form was a deterioration, but we'd have them do a lot of AMRAP sets. We do 5x5s, and it started with just basic movement patterns. You know, like this is how you squat, this is how you front squat, this is the bench press.
How'd you front squat? Weightlifter style or bodybuilder style?
To be honest, I went by what, you know, the kids' limitations were. Obviously, some of the kids who didn't have the mobility to really get in that position. How much time do you have when you're coaching football?
Yep.
You don't have a lot. So I'm not trying to make these guys into elite level Olympic weightlifters. I'm trying to get them at least a little bit stronger for the amount of time we have. So It was more kind of, you know, some guys would do this, some guys that had the mobility could get in that position. But it was, you know, it was real basic when we first started. And it kind of grew and grew. And then, you know, we started moving into more advanced things. We ran 5-3-1 for a year, great results.
How many days a week were you volunteering?
At this point, I'd say we were training. It was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type deal. In the off season.
After
obviously
school,
as we got closer.
Before school, after school. So take us through, like how did you warm the guys up? What kind of space did you have available? Like talk us through some of that. What was the equipment?
The weight room was not huge at this point.
How many kids in the weight room at one time?
So we'd roughly have anywhere from, again, and it depended on certain, you know, times academically if kids were in other groups, but we'd have usually some days we'd have no less than 10 up to maybe, you know, 25 guys at a time. And we kind of had to break it down. Generally it was more the upperclassmen in the beginning, and it kind of spread, but we would do, you know, just like they talked about in The Strongest Shall Survive, you'd have kind of circuits, right? With compound movements. They'd run through this station, they'd hit their prescribed reps, then we move over here. And you know, the way the assistance lifts, you go back to Louis Simmons and like the bodybuilding style, we would have general movements that we'd get through the day, you know, like, so after the main lift, we'd have more bodybuilding stuff programmed. In the beginning, it would be a complex of, you know, maybe the muscles we saw fit, right? We do a lot of core work. We do a lot of hyperextensions. We didn't have a reverse hyper or anything like that, but we basically targeted the areas we'd see guys get, you know, have the most weakness in. As it grew and developed, we moved, like I said, more into a conjugate system where we would have one main lift a day, and then we'd have a bunch of assistance lifts built around that lift. And they would, you know, shoot for new PRs once they learned all the forms. So to go back to your question in the beginning, we'd start with, you know, like calisthenics, just get the blood flowing, kind of warm them up that way. A lot of the guys had to, you know, they were learning the movements as we're going through. So we'd have to spend a decent amount of time going through the range of motion. And Jim always said something that you know, is huge. I think that people forget is don't coach what you don't know.
Yes.
Now that's essentially what it came down to. Like, well, what movements did I know? Okay. Am I teaching these kids a snatch? No, I can't.
Did you power clean, being that that's in the Strongest Shall Survive? Strongest Shall Survive is squat, bench, clean.
Yep. So we did basic power cleans, sometimes hang cleans.
Yep.
We do bench press, overhead press, squat. We would front squat, and then we do trap bar deadlift in the beginning. Okay. And it was, we had those like the old Gerard trap bar. It didn't even have high handles.
I was just going to say, what's interesting is these old schools that haven't been updated, they've got I actually had one at this school, and these kids have such like crappy ankle and hip mobility, they can't really get down there. And so I had a buddy of mine's a welder. He cut it, kind of made it a little bit bigger so a bigger kid could fit in it, and he welded high handles on it. Yeah, it came out great. So you had how many of those Gerard trap bars?
We had 2. Again, this is back at South Hadley. After South Hadley, I left and took on the full-time strength conditioning program position at McDuffie Prep School.
So this school never said, "Hey, Josh, we'll pay you." Did that ever come up?
So they offered me like a coaching bonus, and I was like, hey, put the money towards the stuff we need. And I had a lot of different other career stuff going on at that point. I was kind of busy, and I had started working with the track team, and Nick Davis, who is the South Hadley girls track coach, he won 2 Western Mass titles. He recommended me to the school, McDuffie, that I was at. He was talking about, how we brought the program in and it kind of helped the girls out. So they contacted me and they were like, hey, would you want to be the strength coach? And I was like, sure. So that was
a track team.
Yeah, I worked with them after the second year of football. We started kind of working with the track team also.
Yep.
So he recommended me to this prep school and they hired me. And then I worked there for the last 2 years. And then we had, obviously with COVID, there's no weight room right now. So all the athletes are now here, essentially.
Let's, I was going to say, once we're done chatting a little bit, we'll do a video tour of your garage gym. How many kids do you take at a time in your garage?
Right now we do about obviously with COVID and everything, we keep it kind of guys who are, see each other all the time in school or on similar teams and stuff. So we'll do about like 5 at a time tops.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I want to go back to that question. So, and this kind of is a big thing, I think, for anybody who's kind of getting into coaching, like start with basic stuff. Like we started with basic movements, 5x5, moved into 5-3-1. Then obviously as the years went on and we got more equipment, we moved into conjugate. We had Nate Harvey's Conjugate U's a phenomenal book. So I kind of modeled a lot of stuff off of that. We did, we do max effort day. Obviously with high school kids, we weren't going into 1 rep max. We'd go to like 5s, 3s, maybe even 6s or 4s. We'd have them just push a top max set. And then, like you said, after that, we just bodybuild around whatever we worked that day. So, we would do movements like the push press or, we do box squats, whatever we did, we would gear our assistance lifts to be supplemental to that movement. And we'd get them in roughly, we do about 3 days a week also. So we do a max effort upper of 5 3s or 4s 2s.
Yep.
Occasionally we do 1. Then we do a full body dynamic day with a lot of assistance movements. And
what day is that? The middle of the week or the end of the week?
Yeah, we would do that on Wednesday, and then the end of the week we would do the other end. We would do the other. We would do either upper or lower, whatever.
Yeah,
how we had it worked
I'm
out
pretty similar to that. I was doing a full body dynamic day on Friday because I wanted to get the kids in, and then we would do like a lot of arm pump up because I knew I knew that like if you get them
motivated,
that's like what they're about. They still want a lot of arm work, so I would teach them a different bicep exercise, a different tricep exercise every week. And so by the time we're in it, like 8 weeks, I'd say, all right, you got to get 100 reps of biceps and triceps. You could use 5 different bicep exercises, 5 different triceps. They loved it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and it's, at that age, you got to do what people, I guess, are impressed by, right? Like they think they correlate large biceps with strength and power.
Yeah. Josh, have you taken a different look on the importance of arm work after kind of like, if you review guys like Bill Cino or even Louis Simmons, so much arm work, have you ever reassessed the way you look at arms and said, man, I think I'm gonna put a little more volume into this arm work? You ever think that?
I think I definitely have. And I'll give you an example. So I've always been a decent squatter, decent deadlifter, terrible bench. My bench is just trash. Right. And it was just years I follow every program, I'd read stuff, and I had pinched a nerve, and I had lost pretty much, most of the feeling on the outside of my index finger.
Where'd you pinch a nerve? Your neck, trap?
Yeah, my shoulder. I was doing neck harness. like a dumbass. I put a 25-pound plate on and I was repping out. I'd squatted like 670 that day. And I was like, well, it was, parallel box squat. And I'm like, I'll just do some, neck work because I'm feeling a little pinch. And I went heavy and I pinched a nerve and I was like,
what's heavy? 25 pounds is not
heavy. I put
heavy.
a 25-pound plate on. I hadn't done it in like 3 months and I was doing like sets of, 15, 20 reps.
Yeah.
So I everything was fine. I wake up the next day and I'm like, oh, and, I have a lot of pain. I was like, I haven't used the neck harness in a while. So all of a sudden now my bench is like 185 I can't do, right? Because like one arm's just not working.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh man, like, what do I do? So I started reading, combing through, and I found Bill Antone's bench program. I talked to sports doctors and everybody, and they're like, you gotta work on your mobility, you gotta stretch, all these things, rehab work, a lot of the stuff for the rotator cuff, and you have upper cross syndrome, so you gotta kind of open up your rear delts, so you're real tight up there. So I'm like, okay, I'm doing all this rehab work, and I find Bill Antone's program, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, this is really long-term goal-oriented. I
never heard of Bill Antone. Where was he from?
He was the 13th man to bench press 400 pounds. I want to say it was either 1953 or 1958, but he was like a 181. He wasn't a big guy.
What was his book called?
It's called How to Bench Press 400 Pounds. That's literally what his book's called. It's like a little pamphlet. So I was like, all right, I'll check it out. So I started following the program. I'm starting with like 10 by 12 at like 95 pounds. Because that's all I can do effectively without destroying myself. But each week you had 5 pounds. So you bench 3 days a week and you do it for 3-month phases. And then the volume drops a little bit, but the weight keeps going up. So, I started with like 95 pounds and now you're over here at like, 225 for like 12 sets of 5 and they're all speed reps. And they're speed reps. They're flying and I started kind of getting a little conjugate with it. Now I don't want to use the term conjugate. Like I was rotating bars as I went through it to just not be bored. So I do like straight bar, axle bar, Duffalo bar, football bar, cycle through it. So I did that for the first 3-month phase, adding weight. And I do like really close grip. All of a sudden, like my shoulder's better, right? My hands, I can feel everything, but now I'm like way more explosive. And I'm like, oh man, I got some strength gains. I got some size gains. And it's like, I see the value of incorporating a lot more upper body volume. So even after that, I start doing a lot more dumbbell work, right? Not heavy, but just getting the reps in after you lift. And we go back to what we were talking about earlier. You look at all these guys from the 60s and 70s, they were multi-sport champions, right? They had great physiques and they were really strong. Why? Because they did a shit ton of volume.
They did a lot of calisthenics too. They did a lot of push-ups, pull-ups, and dips.
So it's not to take anything away from the modern guy, because there's a lot of strong people out there, but you got to think like they didn't have bench shirts or squat suits, so they had to turn their bodies into those essentially by putting on as much muscle mass as they could. Yeah,
you mentioned dumbbells. My favorite earliest, it was a VHS tape from Louis, was his special strengths. And I remember they did a repetition day and Mike Ruggiero benched like, I don't know what those dumbbells were, but he got like 30 something reps with, maybe they were 90, maybe they were 120s, but
it was something crazy. But, and it goes back to those Westside books. What does Louis preach? He preaches the max effort, the dynamic, and then the repetition method. And like you said, triceps and lats are like in every one of their workouts. Yeah. But you look at all those guys and that's why they're breaking world records. That's why they're strong.
Yeah. So I just remember that. And I remember seeing like Mike Ruggiero's like the muscle around his elbow. I was like, damn. And so I'll incorporate that a lot. And I kind of borrowed what Matt Wenning does with his higher rep. Yep. I wasn't doing high reps like Matt was for the warm up. So we've been kind of front loading our workouts. When I'm at the high school, I give them 3 exercises, 3 rounds, 15 reps week 1. Next week, something different, 20 reps. Next week, 25 reps. Then we kind of recycle through. You mentioning rotating bars. So behind you've got your hook bar, and you mentioned benching. I remember when I had a cambered bar, I would sometimes bench with it. Have you benched with your hook bar yet?
Yeah. Now, granted, this one only fits in the monolift. Okay. We're moving into production on the rackable one. And you know that, obviously. We've talked about that. But I pulled the bench in here and dropped the hooks. And, yeah, it's kind of fun, put some bands on there and bench with it. It's definitely interesting. You get a good sway out of it. But yeah, I have bench with it. It's unique. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. So, I've had a shoulder injury, pretty much to the point where I was like, I think I got to get surgery. But I started like doing banded bench with the Swiss bar, and I felt like it set my shoulder in place. I started utilizing a lot of it. So let's just talk about the hook bar. What was I love hearing inspiration behind why somebody creates something. And if I look at like kind of the lineage of the people creating the best equipment, now I'm looking at you, Donnie Thompson, Chris Duff, and, of course, Louie. It's guys that are really lifting.
Well, to be even listed in that name, that group right there, that's, you're making me blush. I'll be humble because all those guys are extremely intelligent, extremely accomplished. This squad kind of came out of necessity. So, I'm nowhere near as brilliant as those guys, obviously, but there was an influence, we'll say, from, obviously all of them to some capacity.
Right. Why did you feel like you had to create this bar? What was the inspiration?
So going back to the story, with the pinched nerve, my training partner, Ryan, we've been lifting together since I got out of the military, and me and him grew up together. We've been friends since high school. So we started getting really, like, right when I got out of the service, I got home, we started kind of getting back. We started powerlifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
We weren't doing like bodybuilding or calisthenics. We kind of just started powerlifting, and we've been training together for years. So I pinched the nerve, and his first thought, right, is, well, I don't have a training partner. Who's going to spot me? Like, that was his concern, not like,
yep.
Oh, are you all right or anything? Like, oh,
those are the best training partners, though.
What am I going to do? So we had taken a squat last cycle. We were following, speaking of Donnie Thompson, we were following Donnie's squat cycle. And
That's
I think
right.
I had the cambered bar with 500 pounds. And I think we had like the blues and Donnie rolls them over the plate to make the accommodating resistance, obviously,
even
a
harder.
lot more aggressive.
First guy to do that.
Yeah, so we had done that, and we really liked that variation. And obviously, as you know, in his program, that's the first week. So Ryan's first thought was like, shit, I can't get the bands over the damn plates by myself. Like, this is going to be a pain in the ass, So I'm sitting there and I go, yeah, you're right. I go, wouldn't it be cool if there was a way to adjust the accommodating resistance on a bar, but just by yourself? And then the light came on, right? So Ryan bitching and complaining is what made me think like, oh, there's got to be an easier way to do this.
Yeah.
So I kind of just thought about it, and I was talking to Kenny Toth, and I was like, what if there was a bar that gave, anybody at any strength level the ability to say, okay, I'm weak at the lift here. How could I target the accommodating resistance to that portion of the movement? So I kind of drew up a couple of designs. And I was like, so it would have to be a bar that had a camber, right? And you'd have to be able to visually see different spots. So that's kind of why we drew up the hooks here. So
right. How many hooks? 4?
We have 4 on the inside.
Yes.
And then obviously you can put one over here on the collar, and
right.
then you can or the sleeve, and then you can also wrap one around the plate. But the big thing was, like, think about it, like it's with every, how much money people spend on specialty bars, right? And I have a lot of them. I've got the Buffalo bar back there, the safety squat, the football bar. As much as those bars change the way the load is placed on you, the accommodating resistance is always that one option, right? You put it around the sleeve.
Around the sleeve.
So we're kind of like, we need to come up with something that gave the athlete a little bit more variance in terms of it. So, I mean, you could still put your weight releasers and your chain on, but as far as the accommodating resistance, I wanted something easy that would give me the ability to adjust and then have a verifiable difference. So I got like I'm looking at my band wall over there. I got a scale, and we literally went and adjusted each hook, and we saw what band tension was. So with like the big blue bands, each one of those hooks is about 10 pounds different, but it hits you at a different place. So you can work up to a new PR on one hook. And as we're actually going through right now, we're manufacturing removable handles, so you can also change it up and have a grip here,
like a
as
safety.
opposed to a camber. So
yeah, like a safety bar. I think with you and I talking about injuries, mentioning of course Donnie, it's like that. Everything's how long can you want to keep preserving your body? So I think you need specialty bars in any serious training program. That's me personally. I heard like Dr. John Russin mentioned that like a straight bar squat, it's like the silent shoulder killer. You feel good there, but over and over. In fact, like this week, I was teaching kids squats. So all day getting under the bar, doing those repetitions, my shoulder feels like crap without any weight on the bar. But I'm repeating it like a gazillion times all week, showing them grabbing, going under it. And so, Eddie Cohn, I think, said, you only have so many 1 rep max that you only have so many, like whatever, 700 or 800 pound deadlifts. You only have so many times of benching with a straight bar or squatting with a straight bar. Some guys could get away with it, but I think in lifting, a big mistake is you kind of fall in love with what somebody else is doing and you think you could do what they do. But kind of like what you're doing, you learn from this book, then you're learning from Donnie, then you're learning from Jimmy and Louie. That to me is like, that's when you're intelligent, because you're thinking for yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, you go back, Donnie's posted, I can't even tell you how many times I remember he was talking about the straight bar and how, the dogma of powerlifting. And I mean, you look at the fat pad he invented, that thing, I mean, I have it right over there on the bench rack. I'll show you in the tour, but that thing, like, it saves pecs. It literally saves pecs. If you look at like
saved my shoulder, I think.
Yeah. If you think, exactly. And
I tore my shoulder benching light, 145 pounds. I was pressing it, and then I heard like the labrum. I felt it go like, it like exploded. And I remember saying to myself, I'm not a big guy, probably like 220, 222, but it's mileage on the body. Yeah. So the older lifter, you're still in your 30s, Josh?
Yeah, I'm 34.
34. Us, older is essentially how much training mileage you have. The older you get, the more these bars and special pads you need.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes back to it though. You get so caught up in well, like you said, I saw this lifter doing this, so I want to do that. But I mean, it just, I can't even tell you the last time I squatted with a straight bar. It's either a Duffalo bar or a Buffalo bar. If I want to get close to that stimulus, I mean, obviously, if you're competing, you've got to train with those apparatuses. But if you're just looking for, hitting personal PRs or your overall strength, you gotta take care of your body. As time goes on, you have this one physical structure till you're done. So you got to do what you can to make it last. And it's like, you look at like Donnie, we gave credit. We'll give credit again. Like, just think of all the things he's done to make strength training better, right? With the bow tie, the fat bells, the fat pad, like even I'll tell you what, strain your lower back and then try to bench, right? If you have an Eastern arch, you need the fat mat. So it's like, there's a lot of people out there that have these tools out there. And I think we just need to be more accepting of it, right? We need to kind of sit here and say, okay, like, well, what's going to make the sport better? What's going to make strength training better? And I just, like you said, there's a lot of stuff out there, and, you just got to kind of be accepting of new ideas, right? And that's really what it comes down to.
Yep. What do you want to give flip the what are you on a laptop right now?
Yeah, that's why we had all the technical difficulties. Okay. If it was on the cell phone, we would have been fine.
Yeah. Do you want to like show your garage gym and
absolutely
take us through it?
Yeah. So
all right, cool.
I'll walk you through. So it's gonna get a little. We'll try not to mess anything up too much. So here's the monolift. We had that custom built by State of the Art. They do a phenomenal job. We got our bench rack with the fat pad in it right there.
Nice.
And then all our bands. Over here we have a lot of equipment you'll recognize. We got our trap bar. We have a softball bar for grip. Here's the Jubinville lat pull down cable row.
At Jubinville. Yep.
Manufactured in Holyoke. That's actually, the factory was actually 2 miles away from where I live right now. So it's really cool. Here's an old Jubinville leg press, a vertical one. Not the same upholstery. I picked this up in Rhode Island. And then obviously we have the bars.
Josh, what kind of plates you got loaded on that Jubinville vertical leg press?
We have a culmination of York, some old USAs, and I believe this one's an Ivanko, but they're all 50 pounders. So that's 400 pounds right there.
What are those standard plates?
Yep. So all the Jubinville equipment, if you look,
had
a standard slot for it. So we just found a whole bunch of those and threw them on there.
What's a USA plate? Is that TDS?
I don't know if you could see it right
Yeah,
there.
I
Can you
see that. Yeah.
It says USA Barbell. I don't know who made that or how old it is, but it's pretty cool.
Nice.
We got the shoulder rock on the American flag wall back there from
Right.
Kabuki. We got some other grip apparatuses.
Nice grip stuff.
Yep. Jubinville tri push down bar. We've got the Duffalo bar, the Buffalo bar, West Side Power bar, Elite FTS football bar. This beauty is an old York split sleeve on the bottom. I don't know if you can see that.
Lower your camera a little bit. Go lower.
Right there.
Yeah, nice. Yes,
Yep,
beautiful.
That's a York split sleeve. We got a reverse hyper.
Yep. How often do you use that?
Every single day of my life. No, I'm kidding. Probably 4 days a week, realistically.
Nice.
There's all the pattern we use for different box squat heights. So we got the sand dune stepper. That thing's great. We got, a soft box, different mats. Over here we have the 60 squat. This is a bar I made with motorcycle handles to do front squats where you don't stress, put a lot of stress on your wrists.
Yep.
So we use that. We have an axle bar. We got some of these old York collars.
Yeah, I've got them. They're beautiful.
Yep. And then we have the Jubinville pec deck.
How often do you use that?
We use it on upper body days. My brother spends a lot more time on it. We had to kind of pad it a little bit because it's so tight back here. I couldn't even fit in there.
Yeah, but, I guess, back, he made equipment in the 70s or 60s?
1960 to 1993. So here's a Jubinville leg curl leg extension. Here's all our body temperance stuff.
Yeah.
We got the DT rollers. This is actually an 8-inch water main filled with concrete and lead. My buddy Tyler at North Street Strength made that, so I got to give him
How heavy? How heavy is that?
That's 170 pounds.
Damn, you put that on your calves?
Yeah, my wife likes to inflict pain with me on that one. She'll roll me with that. So here's our body temper mats, and this is an old Jubinville ladder rack. And then we have an old sit-up bench. We got a Jubinville calf raise machine, standing calf. And then we got a deadlift platform that was made out of an old table and some 4x6s. And that is the tour.
Very nice. So you'll have five kids usually?
Usually at a time. I'm looking at the ceiling right now, if you can be up there. These are all the different colleges we had in here in the summer.
Oh, so nice.
We had Bryant Rugby, AIC Lacrosse, AIC Baseball, Trinity Baseball, UDA Soccer, and Worcester Baseball. So we had a lot of different guys from, a lot of different sports, but, they would typically meet up and train at different times throughout the summer. But we had a good time. And we still have quite a few of the high school athletes now because obviously, the school facilities are still closed.
You guys playing football? Is football on?
As of right now, so the prep school I work at, they don't have football. Their big draws are basketball and baseball. But I believe all the seasons up here are being pushed to the other end of the year. So
spring. Okay. Yeah. So you're coaching at a prep school now?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
What's that weight room look like? Pretty hooked up?
No comment. No, it's not as. It's got a lot to be desired. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's I came into.
We got more stuff here, but it is what it is. People allocate the budget to what they see fit, and you can't. I'm not an administrator. I'm not sure that. So
right, I think I'm at my second year at a high school, and I really think budget for equipment is very low because the schools had to invest so much money on cleaning supplies. I mean, crazy amounts of money.
It's the thing I will say there, to anybody who has a surplus of equipment, and granted right now there's probably not too many people, but your local high school could probably always use something.
So if you're looking to get rid of stuff,
local high school will definitely, take anything they can get because the budget for that stuff for nowadays, it seems is minimal at best.
Yeah, I'm interested to see when we get equipment more available. I mean, if you look at like you know, the guys that provide the most equipment the fastest would be Rogue. And, you know, they've got they're not doing a Black Friday or a matte black sale because they're out of equipment, and they've got, I mean, from what I understand, they've got a ton of machines. They make their stuff in-house. Some of these other companies don't make it in-house. So
yeah, I'm actually, we just ordered their weight releasers. We're waiting on those when they get here. But didn't they go into production for masks? And they did all this great stuff with this going on. So
yeah,
it's like
did.
you got to kind of tip your cap and say, hey, I get it. I'm waiting for my stuff because you're making a big difference in the world. So
yeah,
I don't mind waiting longer if it means, you know, we're doing the right stuff.
Yeah, good people. So what do you think, like, you know, you're in your mid 30s, you're a full-time strength coach. Are you also doing fire? Are you so are you full-time fireman?
No, I'm part-time at South Hadley right now, with the bar and launching everything. It's, you know, it's kind of a labor of love, and it's taken a bit of my time. So between coaching and the bar, that's really kind of what I'm working on now. I mean, I still work down there, obviously.
Yeah. How can people connect to order a bar or pre-order for when they're available for squat racks? Because probably the majority of our listeners don't have a monolift.
Yeah.
So
you know, and we kind of figured that we wanted to really get it out, the mono version first. And
sure,
that's where we did a lot of our testing and you know, all those things. And that's kind of why we went that route. But we're looking pretty soon. We are taking pre-orders for the mono version right now, but we're going to be at the Mr. America this weekend,
which is, so this won't air. I could try getting this up. So today is October 7th. So does Mr. America start Friday or Saturday?
I believe it starts Saturday. I'll be there Friday, but I don't think everything's going on Saturday.
In Atlantic City. All right. So I'm going to find a way to get this out by Friday. So for Jersey people,
don't rush it. If you know,
don't rush.
Put you in a tough spot, don't rush it.
Yeah. What about the website? How could they reach out to you, Josh?
So on Instagram, we have the link in the profile.
Strength and Power Review. Yep, but you're
Strength and Power Systems on Strength and Power Review. Yes. So
okay.
Strength and Power Review is the Instagram. The website is Strength and Power Systems. There's a link up there you can click and pre-order. Like I said, for the mono bar, the regular rackable version will be out very soon. We'll have, you know, all that info's up there. There's a mailing list you can join, and that'll give you all the information you need when we will have the rackable bar out.
You've also got a book out on Amazon.
I do. Yep, High School Barbell Club. And that talks about that. So, you know, we talked about some of the earlier coaching stuff, doing 5x5 and 5-3-1. And this was some programs I wrote and a few other people that I really respect.
It's great.
Thank you. Yeah. That book for me really was just kind of like, there's so many intelligent people out there. We need to highlight them. Go read their work. And that's essentially what it was. It was just to bridge the gap between somebody walking into the weight room and kind of just learning everything to, okay, I've read this book. I feel like I know what I'm doing a little bit. Who can I read now to get even better? And that's what that was about. So.
Yeah. You, Josh, with you coaching the high school athletes, like on the regular, you ever see yourself kind of writing a book, kind of like the way Keys to Progress was written, where he's kind of telling the kid, it's like conversations.
Yeah. John McCallum's Keys to Progress.
Yes.
I'm glad we're finally talking about it. We're late in here to be bringing it up because it's such a great book. Jason Pegg actually turned me on to that book, and I like it because not only did you get programs in it, right, and all these lessons, but it was written in a really good way where you are getting, you're getting a story with it, and then you're taking these lessons and kind of applying them to yourself. Yeah. So going on to that, yes, I like that style of writing. I think it would be really fun to do something like that. It's tough because, you know, that was a composite of, I believe, 10 years. He wrote that. That was all articles that were together. Yeah. So you really got to have good characters. I mean, I feel like I've got a few. Some of their exploits might be a little illegal for certain books, but. No, I have some really interesting friends, so I think we could come up with something at some point.
I'm writing. I hate to say I have no time to write. You know, I have like 30 minutes of time to kind of do a little work in the morning. then I get home at night and it's like really just time to walk the dog, eat, and spend a little time with the family. So I haven't been writing, but when I do get time, I've been kind of doing like a fictional book, but it's like fictional characters, fake names, but the lessons and story, the lessons are real and the stories get tweaked a little bit. And speaking of the high school kids, when the kids work hard, I always share a story with them, a story of like somebody who was like a crazy lifter when I was at one gym, because I started going to gyms in '89. So those gyms back then were mom and pop gyms.
Yeah. It's
So
not a commercial facility.
right,
There's some characters there.
That's right. You always had characters. So I tell them about like Rudy, who's trying to bench 500, Crazy Eddie, who would 1 rep max everything from like 1-arm dumbbell preacher curls with 100 pounds to like, everything was a 1 rep max. Tell them about like, a guy that like walked up to our squat rack with like business slacks and there was 405. He didn't even ask us. He just went in and squatted it for 10 reps. And I used to this one gym, like the guys dressed, they had such a unique dress. They looked like old school pimps. They had like red suits and like shiny shoes. And this guy, was like dressed in like a suit, and he had the slacks on, the button up shirt, and he got right on the bar 405 and did 10 deep squats with, the dress shoes and the slacks, and then left. And we were like,
that's awesome.
So awesome. Like the kids know, if you work hard, you get a story. Sometimes they ask in the beginning, Coach Evanish, we got a story today. I'm like, guys, we don't just give out stories like that. You got to earn them. Yeah. I kind of like dig into them. Well, then, the weight room I'm at had all these old plates, Ivanko deep dish, Yorks, TDS plates, USA barbell, a couple of them. So I say, guys, let me tell you a little story about these Ivanko plates. And then they gather in and I like push the plates. So you hear the plates rumbling and I go, you hear that sound? I used to train in a gym that only had these plates and all you heard were plates rumbling. So what I did was I really just taught them to fall in love with the experience of training versus, of course we're training for sport performance, but my goal is with these stories that they go to almost create their own stories. Today before training, I read them Henry Rollins, The Iron Never Lies. 200 pounds is always too, because the school that I work in, it's a pretty affluent area. So, some kids are driving Beamers and nice cars. And I remind them, guys, the weight room doesn't care how much money's in that bank account. It's all your effort. It's what you earn. And so I felt like I learned a lot from stories, because when I used to call Louis Simmons in the early 2000s, he would explain to me things through stories. He had a story about a guy who did this, an athlete who did that. And then it made sense to me,
Yeah, no, it's, and I think it's a great way for people to learn. Paul Kelso, you ever read any of his stuff?
Can you believe it? I have not.
You got to read his book. I think it's called
Kelso Shrug.
Kelso Shrug is one of them, but one he has this fictional character, Lope Delk, and I want to say it's,
what a name.
Yeah, it's Powerlifting Texas Style by Paul Kelso. Okay. Short read, really good book, and it's similar. It's like this guy he's an old Vietnam vet, and he'd drink his Coors Heavies, and he's out there welding a bench rack that wouldn't fit inside the gym. It's this really cool story, but it's a composite, and it's similar. I believe Iron Mind also produced it with the Keys of Progress.
All right.
So I hope you write that. I'm looking forward to it. That'd be huge.
Yeah. What, are you a welder, Josh? Do you know how to weld?
No, I wish.
I thought maybe with, your being a firefighter, and then what just struck me was we're talking about people making stuff, Bob Zuver Sr. was part of the first frogmen, the early Navy SEALs. They just called him UDT. How did he know how to weld? They would weld underwater.
Yeah, so there's a few guys that was in the Navy with Holtex. They were really good welders. You go back to Zuver, man. That his gym, that was a cool gym. like the stories and the stuff you read, and David Yardnell actually talks about that in that West Side book. But
Right.
you know, there was like, it was like comical, some of the stuff they had, right? Like they had like a hoist that would lift you out of the hole if you missed the squat, or
That's right.
they'd have the squat, they'd have a light come on in the squat rack when somebody was lifting, and the whole place was made of like boulders. Like it just, I would have loved to see it, but it was he sounded like a character.
It was like, yeah, think about it. You know, I know some SEALs, they're all pretty wild. So he must have been pretty eccentric guy. And I'm losing my train of thought. I remember I read like a story of how there was an accident on like the freeway, and the cars like knocked the guardrails out. So he sent the lifters like running down to the highway to take the guardrail so he could like cut it up and weld it. Oh, this is what I was going to say. Somebody just sold some Zuver plates on Craigslist.
Yeah, I can't imagine what those went for.
Not expensive. Somebody posted it in our you're not on Facebook. That's right.
Nah, I probably should get on Facebook, right?
Have a private York Barbell group in there. And I haven't looked on Craigslist for a long time for used equipment. And so when that happened, first, I was a little depressed that I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And second of all, the price was not expensive. I can't believe somebody would just let go. Like you could, if I had those plates, you couldn't offer me a brand new Mercedes or anything. Like I just can't let them go. Somebody said to me, they saw my 150-pound Globe, and they're like, I will trade you. I've got York deep dishes. I've got Jackson Globe dumbbells. I will pay this and that. He's like, I have to have that dumbbell. I've never seen it. I need it. I go, dude, I will never sell it. He goes, you're wrong. Everything has a price. I go, if you offer me $10,000, I will not let it go. They never responded. And, you know, my hope is that my son uses it. Like my fear is that somebody gets it and now it's just something to sell or trade.
Yeah.
You know, you and I use the equipment. You are utilizing Jubinville's equipment. You know, years ago, I maybe mentioned him in a blog post, and I don't really know a lot about him, but I had heard somebody had some of his equipment in Edison. His like granddaughter must have Googled it, came across his photo on my blog, and she emailed me to see what information I know about him. And, you know, it's interesting that
he was pretty accomplished guy. And it's kind of funny because, you know, like we have all the Olympic plates that we use for the squat, you know, the deadlift, the bench, the big movements. But standard weight, it's like nobody really cares about it. And I found a whole bunch of it, and it fits all that Jubinville. So it's like we have enough plates that we can use, you know, all on the big lifts we want to focus on,
right,
but we don't really ever have to use them for the assistance lifts. And it's really interesting how he designed everything. Everything fit standard plates. Everything was supposed to fit through a doorway in a residential home. So he designed everything that it could either come apart or was extremely light. It was all made in Holyoke, Massachusetts from 1960 to 1993. He fought in World War II. He was a huge influence in the forming of the Mr. America or the Mr. Massachusetts contest. I believe he brought guys like Katz and Arnold and Colombo and Ferrigno out to like Mount Park to do early bodybuilding shows in that area. But he's really cool because he competed in it all. He did bodybuilding, Olympic weightlifting when he was young, and then he actually went into powerlifting when he was old.
Older.
And
I remember
he actually
story.
passed away training in the gym. I believe he was doing rear delt flies, and he sat up and had a heart attack. So,
geez, that's scary.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're gonna go, at least you're going to do something you love, right?
I was honestly thinking the same thing, but it's just like, man, I don't. You know what's interesting is I don't recall seeing the advertisements for his equipment in the magazines. I started reading bodybuilding magazines in '87, but
they were in Powerlifting USA, the old ones. I got an 80 one from '86.
Okay.
But his granddaughter actually reached out. She saw that I was posting and refurbishing all this equipment, and she sent me
reached out.
Yeah, she sent me his book. He wrote a book on muscle control in 1988. But he did so much for strength training just in the area I live, but in general. And it's kind of cool that, you know, these kids come in here in high school and they're lifting on something that, you know, was made here. It was made by somebody who was dedicated to it. And who knows how many gyms, you know, this stuff was in before or who used it. So it's kind of cool to like point out and be like, oh, you know, yeah, you have modern equipment, you have the reverse hyper, you have a, you know, the competition bench, you have the monolith, but oh, you're doing leg curls and leg extensions on a, you know, piece from 1965 or, you know, pec deck. It's really cool. And I think, like you said, going back to that atmosphere of like, you know, the story, like everything they train on kind of has a story.
Has a story. Cool. Yes. The story behind whoever reached out to me for his equipment was, it was in the basement of a house somewhere in Edison, New Jersey. And those basements, you'd have to go around the back of the house and you'd have to like lift up that, I don't even know.
Like a
hatch. Yeah. And then you'd have to go down. So it was like in like an older person's home, somebody who's probably 70s or 80s, they're not getting that stuff out. So that person was lifting on it when they were like a young kid.
Yeah.
Lifting on his equipment. So it's cool now. If you think about it, Josh, now there's a lot of these inventors, but now some people do it on a bigger scale. Like essentially Sorinex started because Richard Soren Pops, you know, Pops grew up in Springfield, New Jersey, which is where Jackson Barbell is from.
Yeah, and I still see Jackson plates, and those things, I'd love to get a hold of them. You know, they look awesome.
Yeah, there's some people catching them, especially in this New Jersey area, because what's happening is whenever they were made in the 60s, 70s or whenever, now those guys are, you know, grandparents or they've, you know, passed on. And so that stuff is sometimes sitting in somebody's home who doesn't lift. And they're just like, let me throw these pieces of crap up on Craigslist. What is this crap? It's collecting dust. Josh, can we get this crap out of this house? It's collecting dust. Sure, Grandma, I'll put it on Craigslist for you. And they don't know. So some people who are, you know, mechanically inclined, I see them turning the Jackson standard plates into Olympic size. They're, you know, drill.
I've seen bore holes out. Yeah, I've seen
bore the holes out. So it's cool to see. Now we have, you know, Sorinex is such a big company. You know, Rogue has given kind of the creator, guys like yourself, Donnie Thompson, the opportunity to like, hey, here's my idea. And then they have the engineers, you know, who can put that stuff together. To me, creating equipment is, man, it's really art. And I came across an old article. I couldn't find it again, but have you ever read articles by J.C. Heiss?
I have not. I'm missing out, it sounds like.
He was like this massive guy. I'd have to, you know, if you look, you've been on the Datillo blog, right? Datillo blog spot.
Yeah.
I maybe came across the article there, but J.C. Heiss was like, I feel like Donnie Thompson was like him reincarnated, because J.C. Heiss wrote about like bucket bells or something. He was thinking of weights, and he like cut them out so he could put his hand inside of them. He had a dream about it. And then ironically, Donnie dreamt that. And I was like, dude, I know it sounds like crazy stuff, but like
there's
parallels, he could have been slightly reincarnated into you. I mean, now the podcast just got really strange.
No, you always see these photos, right? Like somebody, and then it's like somebody nowadays who looks like these people, like dude, 200 years ago or 100 years ago.
That guy is like somewhat in your spirit. And I can't remember where I came across that article. Sometimes I get a little extra time and I just start going, you know, down the wormhole, right? Down the wormhole, and you start reading about all this stuff. But that guy was supposedly crazy strong, like deadlifting over 700 pounds, you know, but wasn't really trying to deadlift. He was just like, he was so naturally strong. So look, bro, almost 9:30, had a great time chatting. We'll definitely do a part 2. I want to, again, just, you know, tell everybody where to connect with you. So on Instagram, Strength and Power Review.
That's it.
And then they could see the link to the hook
It's
bar.
in the profile. Yeah. I'm not super computer savvy. I don't know if you know that, but it's in the profile. I believe they can
perfect.
Over there.
And then they could message you through Instagram. That's how you and I first connected.
Yep.
Yeah, great stuff you post on there. It's like inspiring. It's just, I love it.
It's cool for me because at this point there's so many great resources, and through strength training, I met so many people, like awesome people who have shared information. So, you know, you'll get people hit me up and they'll be like, oh, well, where can I find this book? And if I have it as a PDF, I always send it out. So, you know, if hopefully this isn't like open the floodgates and I get like 30,000 emails.
Yeah. Listen,
anybody, if people are looking for books, you know, I always try to help them find it, because it's a shame that these great pieces of work are, you know, disappeared. We got to keep them alive.
Things used to just be cheaper. I used to be able to find these vintage books and not get. Now people sell everything as a business, you know, and I get it. Look, I want to make money too, but don't sell the book for $800 because it's not even important to you. You just came across it. Now you see it's popular. Like, let somebody who's going to use it, because I'm going to take that information and share it with kids. I'm going to pass it on to my own kids. You know, I want my son to eventually come down into this library and just sit on the floor and go through that stuff. But kids love the phone. I love the smell of a book.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's tough because, you know, like reading is looked at as a chore, but I'm telling you, there's so many great books out there. You know, in every strength book you read, you'll always find something. You'll find one thing that might just help you, you know, get a little bit better at your sport or whatever lift you're working on, maybe set a PR. There's always something that's going to help you. You just got to.
Even life, like George Hackenschmidt's book, The Way to Live. When I reread it, it reminds me, simplify. He was very much like my grandfather. You know, he'd wake up, walk, do physical activity. Then he'd have a cup of tea or coffee. He'd have like fresh bread with fresh cheese. You know, like he wasn't like, I can't have bread. You know, back then they made their bread. And so, you know, I'd be with my grandfather in Israel. We'd go to the beach. On the way back from the beach, he'd always stop in like what was like a farmer's market. And like, is this fresh fruit? And he'd get like different unique fruits, like a cactus fruit. And just, man, was like, you know, my grandfather worked with his hands. You know, he was never into the weightlifting, but I'll have to tell you next time the story of when he brought me to the Romanian weight. That's what we were talking about last time.
We literally talked about this like 2 days ago.
We said we were going to talk about it, but yeah, he, you know, weightlifting and stuff in the 90s in Israel was like, that was like a strange thing. You know, when people saw me at the beach, like all built, they were like, what is your name? like you must be like,
who are you?
Yeah, who are, the way they said it is like, how do I call you? Like, how do I say, what is your name? Like, and I remember I was at the beach with my grandfather, I'll tell you this. And like, this like group of men came up to me. They had like an inflatable raft. And they're like, what do we call you? Can you please open? Like, they couldn't open the thing. It was like stuck in there. I opened it. They looked at me like I was God, and it was funny.
They started applauding. They're clapping for you, and you just start posing.
And so, you know what that's like? That's very much like those, you know, before the classical era of bodybuilding. If you were had muscles, you were looked at like a circus performer, like you had special power. They didn't look at it like, this guy lifts, he earned it, he works for it. They looked at you like you had special powers. So when people saw me, like they looked at me, they moved out of the way. You know, you'd go to eat.
Their kids, you know, like, don't look at them.
They would really, like, I remember staring, and I remember going out to eat and, you know, ordering like chicken and rice. And then they'd come back, do you need more chicken? We have more chicken for you. Like so interesting. Like other countries are kind of behind on that stuff. So it was interesting. So yeah, next time we'll talk about the Romanians, the more Russian stories. But
yeah,
Josh, this was great. So stay on. I'm going to shut it down. Want to thank everybody for watching and listening. I really like it when you guys watch, because then you get to see stuff like this. Like Josh, we're filming it from his garage. You get to see a tour of his garage gym. I've done that with guys. Brett Contreras, you know, Josh Bryant, they give us a tour of their home gym or their small kind of garage gym, and it's special. So for those of you listening and watching, we're everywhere for podcasts. So Apple, Stitcher, you name it. If you could go on Apple and leave a 5-star review, that's great. And share it with a friend, because, you know, real recognize real. This stuff inspires people. And I think people need inspiration. The world is a crazy place now. So thanks again to everybody. Go to zachstrength.com. That's the free newsletter. And then from there, you could access our store, and whatever questions you have, send me an email. So Josh, hang tight. I'm going to shut it down, my man. Stop the recording.